Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everyone and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for our March virtual panel through the Power of Plus. We're so excited to be having this important and timely conversation this evening about fighting colorism and anti-Blackness from within the plus size community. For those who don't know me, my name is Gianluca Russo, and I'm the co-founder here at the Power of Plus. I'm also a fashion and entertainment journalist for Teen Vogue and Nylon, and I just want to thank you all for joining us this evening. We have had the best time growing this community since we launched back July. And it's been so great to create a platform where we can really have these raw and important conversations that push the dialogue forward. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I'll now pass it over to Shamara Lawrence, my co-host, who will introduce herself.
Thank you, Gianluca. Good night, everyone. My name is Shamara Lawrence, and I'm the co-founder of The Power of Plus. I'm also a fashion, beauty, and culture writer. My words have been published in places like Teen Vogue, Allure, Refining 29, essentially the whole internet. And I'm also super excited to be having this conversation with four incredible women and Gianluca about anti-Blackness and colorism in the industry because it's a subject that isn't spoken about as much as it should. So I'm really glad that we're having this dialogue tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And our conversation this evening is sponsored by Curvy Couture, an inclusive intimates brand that Shamara and I have a really deep appreciation for. Available in cup sizes B through H and band sizes up to a 46, Curvy Couture is one of the few brands that prioritizes plus in a really powerful way. And for all of you attending tonight, you can use the code POWER30 for 30% off your order from Curvy Couture through midnight on Saturday, March 13th. We will send out an email after this panel to make sure you have that code ready in your inbox for you. And so, without further ado, let us introduce our beautiful panelists for this evening.
Yes. So starting off, we have the OG Marie Denee, who is the creator of the digital plus size media platform, The Curvy Fashionista. With over 11 years of prior retail and management experience, Marie is often sought out for her industry knowledge, marketing experience, and the ins and outs of plus size fashion. As an industry vet, she has received many honors, including the Route 100 list of most influential African Americans, no big deal, the Network Journal's Top 40 Under 40, and BET's Future 40 Award. Thanks for being here tonight, Marie.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited.
Next up, we have Joyniece of Fly and Fluffy, who is a writer, model, and influencer. An active and outspoken figure in the plus community, Joyniece runs the growing IG page Fly and Fluffy, which encourages people of all sizes to live their lives unapologetically. You may have seen Joyniece featured by brands such as Plus Model Magazine, Fat Mermaids, Universal Standard, and Via & Co. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
Of course. And next up, we have Charmaine Charmant, who is a New York City native of Caribbean descent with a passion for women's empowerment and fashion. She earned her BA from Wellesley College and her MS in management from Wake Forest University prior to becoming a fashion and lifestyle content creator who's been featured on ABC7, XO Nicole, and BuzzFeed. She's also worked with incredible brands like Ashley Stewart, Forever 21, and 11 Honore. Thanks for being here tonight, Charmaine.
Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
And lastly, we have Ari Bines, who is a blogger, model, and editor who specializes in fashion, beauty, and pop culture related content. As a Black, queer, and plus size Gen Zillennial, she tailors her content to those who are often left unheard among the masses. Thank you for being here tonight, Ari.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. And so, as some of you may have known, we originally had this panel scheduled for a few weeks back, but after an important conversation emerged online regarding the lack of dark skinned Black women present, we decided to postpone the conversation until today to approach it from a bit of a different angle.
Yeah, as unfortunate as that blind spot was on our part, it echoes an all too familiar occurrence within the fashion community where those of different marginalized identities and intersections are excluded from the narrative to make room for more palatable voices by society standards. And colorism extends so far that it impacts nearly every aspect of the industry and society at large.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so we thought that we could start there tonight with our conversation. Now, everyone tuning in, you can make sure to submit questions through the Q&A. We will answer those at the end. And also feel free to use the chat function to discuss during the panel. We'll keep an eye on that as well. And so starting our conversation there with how colorism has harmed our panelists throughout their respective careers, Marie, being an OG, as Shamara has mentioned, I would love to know your perspective on this and how you have seen colorism affect you and fellow Black women since the start of the plus size industry online, essentially.
Wow. It's interesting. I remember when, gosh, back in 2008, right at the beginning, or like right at the first curve of blogging, right? Web blogs, blogging. I remember those who were pushing fashion forward, those who were innovating, those who were challenging, bucking the system, and giving us visible representation were Black influencers, Black bloggers, Black creators for the longest time, for a very long time, and not the ambiguous. We had stylish curves, you had, there's so many people who stopped blogging since then, but I can remember from various sizes and shapes and hues that we had. And I often talk about this now, how the growth of plus size fashion has happened off of the backs of Black women, Black and brown women. And I keep stressing that because today's plus size industry, if you go to Instagram, if you go to TikTok or any other platform, those who are getting most of the love, those who are getting the attention, the awareness, oftentimes aren't the women of color that, is not representative of like that journey that we've seen this industry grow to. We have an industry, we have representation because of visible plus size Black women and Latino women who've come in to help usher and show. It almost is like we've given people permission to like own and take up space from a visual perspective. And so now you start to see more influencers. When you see campaigns or collaborations, how often do we see it be a Black influencer, a darker skin influencer? How often do we see the campaigns, commercials, like we're not represented there. Although the awareness and the interest that has come along in plus has lacked like the women who kind of helped usher it in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Marie, we've had this conversation many times before, but all of those women who started, some who are still blogging and part of the community, some who have stepped away, when you look back on the history books per se, if you look back on articles, they are erased from them, right? And so you don't even know when plus fashion really even started or who contributed it, because it credits it to people later on who came in and got swept up in the mainstream. And
I would say, I would interrupt there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that it's being erased, it's that it's not even being considered.
Right.
So that's a different perspective, because like right now people only reference Instagram, but a quick Google search will pull up all the information that you're looking for. So if people stepped away or dug further and deeper than just Instagram, because that's where everybody is right now, right? They could go and look on Facebook. I mean, granted, people have their feelings about that site, but the information is there. It's just a matter of like really looking beyond. Hell, like even when I started my research, before I started the Curvy Fashionista, I was digging in the books. I was trying to figure out what happened to Figure magazine. I was learning about Gwen DeVoe and Susan Moses and Maddie Jones Figueroa, and I was like going through the archives. Sharon Quinn, Lyris Cross was still doing her thing. I mean, there are women who have been in this space who have literally, and even today, we dropped an article about 25 women of color who have like paved the way. Perfect time for this, right? But today I got a comment which I was so excited about being challenged by, because she was like, "Girl, but you need to go back to the 80s, because we was still fucking it up in the 80s." So now I'm like, I want to go to the 80s and find out even more. For me, understanding where we come from only helps enrich where we're going. And I think oftentimes we're so used to just dealing with or receiving the information that's being fed to us through an algorithm that's already inherently biased. So we're not allowing ourselves to be challenged to look beyond.
Yeah,
Sorry, you
absolutely.
done got me going. I'm like,
No, it's perfect. And so, talking about social media, Ari, as someone who works in media now, which is so heavily influenced by the trends online and by Instagram, especially in fashion media, what role do you think that media plays in perpetuating these issues even further?
I mean, really, even just going off what Marie was saying is like, I think the media loves to participate in one drop ruling. And so it's kind of like the media is always considerate of like, who is our target audience? Everybody's always considerate of who's our target audience, who's our target audience, how can we make the biggest profit with the biggest audience? The biggest audience is not Black plus size women. The biggest audience is white folks. And they're always going to be the first person who's considered in any type of content that is produced. And so when it's just like the masses, which is white people, and then there's us, the 15%, like we are not going to be what's considered when they're going into the creative process and building a cast or building a set of model list. And it's just like, it's really sad because it's like they go into this thinking, it's like, well, we have to appeal to white people first, and then we can think about everybody else. And it really needs to be the other way around, where you're thinking about people of color first, because that's like the real trickle down theory, because everybody else is going to benefit afterwards in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. Like once you liberate, LGBTQ, dark-skinned Black women from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, everyone else benefits, So it makes a lot of sense to really center those voices. And we have such a long way to go to really fully representing the full spectrum of plus size people in the world, which is absurd when you think about it, because we're the majority of the American population. And I wonder, Joyniece, as a model who's worked with some really great brands, how has colorism and also the size divide in the industry, how has that impacted you, and how can we as a community push back against that?
Sure. I'm really new to this industry as a content creator, as someone who's working in it. I've always been fascinated by it. I've always been active, but I've always been a bystander because I always thought there wasn't a place for me at the table. I realized that when I was willing to put myself out there, willing to take that step and really start to build my own table and bring people with me and build a community of people who supported me, other people in the industry, folks who may also feel equally marginalized. That's when I really started to find my niche, so to speak. I think in terms of colorism, the story, colorism and, size discrimination, I think kind of in a lot of ways have a lot of similarities. I think that at one point in time, it was taboo to probably see a Black model. Then it was taboo to see a dark-skinned Black model or, whatever. I think the same goes to see someone my size. The fact that Lane Bryant recently featured me on their page, recently being featured in Plus Model magazine, speaks to change coming, right? I was extremely humbled by that opportunity, because not just for me, but for all the people that look like me and those who don't look like me, but also resonate with the, sort of struggles they have being super plus size or infinifat. I think that we have a long way to go, a very long way to go. And some of the steps that we can take to get there is to utilize your network, utilize those people who will champion you and speak up for you. And they don't have to look like you necessarily, right? 9 times out of 10, it's probably beneficial that they don't look like you, because where there are people who have been in this industry a long time, like Marie said, and like I'm sure a lot of us will echo these sentiments, so many people who are not people of color or who are on the fairer skin spectrum of people of color, they have so much influence. That's why they're influencers. And I understand that a lot of them work with brands, and sometimes, they choose to speak up and sometimes they choose not to. I get that as well, but they are the ones that can help pave the path. So many people call themselves allies, and when we them to step up most, they kind of shrink away. That's not how we're going to get anywhere in this industry or in this world. We have to step together hand in hand across that finish line, and I think we can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation, especially since last summer, about racial equality and the importance of allies really using their platform and using their voices to amplify people of color, especially the Black community and those most marginalized in our community. Social media has also just given Black women a space to hold brands accountable. However, on the flip side, it's also led to a rise in performative allyship. So those people who are just like putting up their Black boxes and not saying anything after that. And, you know, I wonder, Charmaine, as an influencer, how have you experienced this dichotomy between, you know, performative allyship online and then the lack of direct support and opportunity behind the scenes from people who claim to say they uphold diversity?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about that. This year, I think this past year, especially in quarantine with everything going on, I think there's been a lot of performative allyship going on. You know, and I personally have dealt with that in my personal life. On Instagram, I spoke about, you know, a close friend of mine who, you know, she's white, and throughout, you know, the entire, all the things that unfolded in the year, she had said nothing to me. She would text me about, she would see me posting about all these things and she would watch my stories and then completely ignore me, but like tell me, oh, I like, if I posted something about a pair of shoes I bought, oh my gosh, like I want to get those shoes. And it was just like very strange. And I remember I spoke about it online, and so many people who look like us were coming out and saying that they were experiencing the same thing. Same goes for, you know, people and brands that we work with, right? Like once people are being called out for, you know, not having that representation, you kind of see them scrambling to get, you know, Black content creators, Black plus size content creators on their roster. For me, that has shown up in many different ways. More often than not, brands are reaching out to me and asking for free content. They want me to create free content for, you know, Black History Month. They want me to create.
Oh,
no. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this may have like worked, you know, when I was, you know, first starting out, but like, I'm not new to this. So like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like you wanna be a part of the solution, but you don't wanna include us when it comes to payment. Like we don't do this for free. We have to keep our lights on, right? Like I need heat in my house. Like I can't pay the bills with exposure, quote unquote exposure. And so to me, it's kind of like, that's a slap in the face, right? Like, and that happens quite a bit, you know? On the flip side, I will say that, you know, one brand, and it's not really a brand, Facebook has, I think they did a good job of, you know, really trying to understand, okay, what is the problem here? How are we feeding into the problem? And how can we invest in Black content creators across, you know, across all of the intersections. And I think they've done a really good job at that. And with their We the Culture program that I'm a part of. So, you know, that's one positive that I can say in like a sea of negatives. So
woo, Charmaine. I'm in a similar program as you. So hey girl, with Facebook.
Hey,
I love that.
I love to hear that. I really love to hear that because, you know, we are left out. And the funny thing is that, you know, what Ari was saying about people not interested in targeting, you know, Black women, Black consumers, it blows my mind because we really do start the trends. Like, I don't care what anyone says, like Black women start the trends. The Black community is so powerful. Like we are so creative, like anything was started by us. And, you know, I think that it is such a missed opportunity for these brands to exclude us when they're thinking about, you know, their targeting and the content that they're trying to build. It just doesn't make sense.
Miss Charmaine, to your point, I remember I was at a headquarters and I said to the brand, I He said, let me tell you where you effed up. I used the F word there because I didn't care. And I was like, you know, you wonder why this is not moving. This is why. This is what you did.
Right.
You have this opportunity. I was like, dude, the Nielsen report just dropped that showed that Black people influence $2.3 trillion. Like, how can you not see this? Like I was over there just like, but for me, you know, to the sense, like, I recognize my access. I recognize, like, for me, because I've been in this space so long and I have a lot of direct connects, like, while I may not be on Instagram saying a lot, first of all, I don't really be on Instagram. So, like, if I'm not on Instagram, you'll find me on Twitter, though. That's where you will find me. I'm picking up the phone. That's my jam. But I'm gonna pick up the phone, or I'm gonna be in their face. Like, so for me, like with this, especially this past summer, like I picked up a couple of consulting clients, especially one I now sit on a board for with the influencer agency. And I'm showing them and course correcting and being like, this right here is problematic. This is what got you in this mess. Okay, this is how you need to, like, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it. And, you know, so like as we're in different places and learning our own voices, like even, you know, as we have our voices, it's just as important that we do speak up and offer ourselves in the sense of services so we can get, like, you know, paid for our expertise. But to be able to affect change and to make an impact, because if I can help the next wave of influencers, because, you know, whatever I'm sharing and showing and teaching, I'm gonna tell them very bluntly and very directly where they're messing up and what it's going to be. And you can don't believe me, go ahead and keep doing what you're doing and see what happens. And so, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that you brought that up, because that is where I think things are going awry, right? Like, you can't just have like one Black woman, you know, on the creative team, right? You can't just have, for instance, like I love, whenever I think about things as an influencer, when people are hitting me up and asking for free work, I'm like, okay, I think about it from the standpoint of, I used to work on the business side of fashion. So I used to work at Bloomingdale's Corporate. I used to be a buyer. I was one of the only Black women in my entire office on my floor, and like one of two brown girls, and both of us left because it was such a toxic environment. There was, you know, it just was.
I used to work at Bloomingdale's too, I know.
What'd you say?
I used to work at Bloomies too, girl, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, so you already know, right? Like, you know, it was such a homogenous working situation, and like, no wonder, right? No wonder you don't see like Black models. No wonder there was nothing that I could wear when I went into the stores, right? Because nothing fit me, because there's only one kind of person, like a million of one kind of person on the back end. So they don't know, they're not thinking about this. They're not thinking about representation. They have no idea. And there's no one there to tell them, because what am I as the one Black girl who's listening to me, right? Like, and some people might feel like they can't speak up, you know what I mean? And so for me, you know, I started blogging when I was actually in college, and I stopped blogging while I was working at Bloomingdale's Corporate. You know, and after I was working at J. Crew Corporate, because I felt like, you know, I felt like I was a part of, you know, this coveted profession that I had so long to be a part of. But then I was like, there's no room for me here, even though I'm here. So like, it kind of, you know, messed with me, and I left and decided to do something else. And I'm so glad that I did, because I realized that, you know, I need to get back to my passion. And luckily, I really do believe that, you know, what's meant for you never misses you. But, you know, it's time for people on the back end to realize, like, oh, wait, like, we need to actually diversify, like, you know, our teams, so that we can better serve, you know, people of all backgrounds.
How about plus size people working at plus size businesses?
How about that? How about plus size fit models? How about that? Like, how about, you know what I mean? It just, these are people that, you know, they're supposed to be educated, and they went here and they went there, and it's like such a simple, like, thing to think about, and it's just like, it's missed them for.
And it's at almost every single brand. When you start looking at, like, leadership. You're like, dude, how you gonna talk about what a plus size person should be wearing when nobody is plus size?
Right.
I remember I told a buyer person, and she was like, would you guys wear this? And I said, would you? And she was like, well, he was like, well, no, because I was like, then why would you think that just because we're plus, like we want like we're this foreign entity? Like, girl, if you ain't gonna wear it, we're not gonna wear it.
Right.
Like it was like, for her, it was like,
yep.
Also, like this.
Back to the, sorry, I'm almost done. To bring it back to like the colorism piece, it's like, you better believe that like, you know, on the back end, like, sure, there's like one Black girl, but she's gonna probably most likely be like mixed or, you know, palatable. She's gonna like fit into the respectability politics of things. So like, that's definitely a thing as well. And that's all I gotta say on that.
Joyniece, did you want to add something to that?
Oh, I did. Also, like, to a couple of points. Yes, usually very palatable. I too got my start in retail at corporate, working on the brand creative team as the only Black person and one of two people of color, and one of two plus size people on the team. So that was very interesting. And seeing things happen, seeing how the sausage is made, so to speak, was very interesting. It was very interesting because I don't think that I really thought people were having these conversations and to sit in rooms where decision makers were talking and essentially deciding what would eventually end up in stores or whatever. It was very disheartening for me to see so many people deny themselves the opportunity to make so much money just based off of like bias or disinterest or whatever it is. I was like, you guys are literally just throwing money out of the window. I don't get how this keeps happening. And it doesn't always, it's not always that bad ideas come to the table, right? It's oftentimes the people that bring the really good ideas are not the people that are the decision makers, right? It boils down to either data or data with air quotes, because oftentimes that's skewed, right? If your focus group is in the middle of America and you're talking to, you know, people of a certain age from a certain generation, their sense of fashion, particularly plus size fashion, is going to be very different than say someone that's in Gen Z. So like making sure that the data that they're referencing is even up to date or relevant, and also giving those people who may not be the top decision makers or whatever, ample amount of space to adequately express themselves and really feel empowered to speak up. And when they speak up, not reprimanding them for doing so, right? Because that's why you hire fresh blood, new talent, people of color. You want to diversify. And this notion that like, it's just the only type of diversity you need is diversity of thought is it's problematic in some ways, but it's also fine. I want to say in a lot of ways, right? If you want to say diversity of thought, if most of the people here have very similar lived experiences, how diverse will their thoughts be? So we really need to start to think about who's at the table and are we giving them enough space to actually eat? I think that a lot of change is coming, and I'm so glad to see so many people here doing that work, and I continue to do that work, and like I can't wait. I look forward to like a year or two from now, 5 years from now, where the industry will be. I'm hoping that it'll be a lot better off than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Ari, was there anything you wanted to add to that conversation? I know that was a lot, but there was any points you wanted to expand on?
No, I just love seeing all of you guys talk about this and just that we're all in agreement that everybody's wilding out here.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I just want to add one more thing. Like, to me, it's funny because as Joyniece said, like, you know, change is coming, and like, I am excited about that too. And I have seen that. Like, I do like to always like have like a positive note. Like, so, you know, Shoe Dazzle, right, reached out to me and they came to me correct. And like, you know, it was a Black woman and I was so excited. We had like a FaceTime and I was like, oh, like, this is amazing to be working with like someone from a brand who gets my content, like, you know, wants me to succeed, like, you know, that is rare. And so something that to me should be like the benchmark is like a highlight of like my month, because I'm like, wow, like, you know, I can see myself in her, you know what I mean? And she can see herself in me, and we can come to the table and create killer content. And, you know, that needs to be the standard.
And Charmaine, I will say congratulations on that. And when you do get when all your stuff happens and you have your images and all that fun stuff, like, please send it to, like, DM it or whatever, so that we can share it.
Yes, definitely.
I mean that. I'm not just like talking, like, I mean, it's nothing to, same to all of y'all, like, I have no problem sharing. Sometimes it's just like, you know, algos, you don't see it. So you know, please, I want to help, like, because that's a good look, sis.
Thank you.
Marie, you talked about signing on with new brands that you're consulting with. I know you've done a lot of brand work, and recently you worked with Eloquy to launch the Cultivate Award, which will help support Black, Indigenous, people of color designers in the size inclusive space. I would love to know, are you finding more brands to be receptive to these conversations and opportunities? And how do you kind of gauge which brands are doing it authentically and which are just reaching out to kind of fill a quota, or do it in a not so great way?
Well, so it's twofold, right? So they were one of the brands who actually was called to the carpet. And having a relationship with them, I knew already that I was like, I want to figure out how I can help these designers. And we had also called out brands to do a collaboration with an indie. Like, I mean, they go all over the place doing these collaborations, which is great. However, we have like a nice crop of indie designers who've been, like, you know, chugging along for a minute, that this would be such an amazing platform for. So, you know, for me, I was like, yo, what are you guys working on? How are you going to fix this? What are you going to do? Because these are problems. I don't talk to you about this. Like, that's literally how I talk to them. Like, and this is a conversation, because for me, it was important that, you know, a brand put their money where their mouth is, because at the end of the day, like, these indie designers need to eat, because they're the ones who are literally innovating, pushing forward fashion in this and what we have. Like, it's, I mean, because I don't know how many times y'all have seen like a whole like inspired by, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen it over the years. And so, like, why not like really give this opportunity? I've started seeing all these different grants and for everything else, but there was nothing in the plus space. There was nothing for the plus size indie designers. So I was like, yo, we need to do this. You need to give some money away and then give mentorship, like teach, right? Because it's not just one thing to give some money, but teach them. Because like there are certain things, me as a business owner, there are things that I didn't know. I have made many mistakes like along this way. But if I had someone like who, you know, like I don't know, some major media brand was like, yo, this is how you do this, that would have helped me so much, right? So anyways, I had a relationship with them. So that's one. I've had a relationship for a very long time. I am a nerd. I am a marketing nerd. So I always approach things from like, you know, trying to see how this can benefit and solve a problem. So that's how I approach things. So I knew like people had, when we had this article that we called out brands, everyone was already suggesting this brand. So I was able to be like, yo, this is what we need to do. We need to give our winner 10 G's, runners up 2,500, and like a gang of like resources and tools that cost a couple of thousands of dollars to get, that we don't have access to, right? So anyways, if you're going to work with the brand, it's important that you understand like where they are, what your goals are, and how in alignment are they? Because it has to align. Like for me, I wanted to help I've always been that place of resource, right? And so being a person of resource, being a brand and a site of resource, like I can help these brands. I can help these designers. So for me, when even the brands that I consult with, they have to be open. And they know that I'm not going to mince my words. I'm going to tell them how it is. I'm going to say what's the problem and how to fix it, and to cut through all the niceties. So, and oftentimes when you're dealing with racial things, it kind of be, you have that, what do they call it? Toxic politeness that kind of just keeps things going around in circles, and nobody addresses the elephant. Like, I go right to it. And so these brands, they've been primed because they're raw, right? They've been ripped. Look at Four as an influencer agency. Like, they have literally made inroads. They hired Brittany Hennessy, who is a Black influencer. She handled influencer marketing at her store. One of those, like, what's the other one? Not Hearst. Condé Nast.
Condé Nast.
She worked at Condé Nast handling influencer stuff. So they brought her on as a consultant with her expertise, and they've been working on showing rather than telling. I mean, so it's just important that, and even with my project with Eloquy, it's only a piece of the pie of the other things they're doing. Right. Because I would not feel comfortable if it was only my thing. So again, this is really reflecting on like a brand and how like how authentic they are, like knowing and asking those hard questions, because a check can be cute, but not at the expense of your integrity, right? And so to impact and affect change, it's going to take a little bit of putting yourself out there and finding those resources. And that's where, whether it's like a Four or influencer agency or any type of like website that teaches you how to build relationships and pitch brands. And really at the end of the day, it's going to come down to relationships, because yeah, I know different brands, but I knew who this would sit the best with. Right. And so I know it's a very long-winded answer to your question, but it's just really important that we, I illustrated that it's not just about, oh, I like this brand. It's like, do they align? What are their missions? What are their goals? And what are your goals? Do they match up? Because oftentimes we'll think, oh, you want it for that look, right? Or that the name, or like all that fanciness that comes down to it. But like, does it really make sense? How many times have we seen collaborations and this shit? You're like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's just important to make sure that those things align up. And when it comes to, it's like really about relationships, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And we've talked a lot about brands in that perspective, but I would like to also talk about the community aspect here, because I feel like a lot of times people will view the plus size community as kind of this safe haven for inclusivity. But really, there are so many divides within the plus size community based on race and size. And I think there's a lot of anti-Blackness even from within the plus size community. So I'd love to open this up to you guys and ask how you've seen anti-Blackness play a role within the plus size community and how it's impacted you. I can open that up to whoever wants to go first on that.
I have a very funny story real quick.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I purposely and intentionally share women of color, Black women that I can find from brands. I try to be very consistent with it. I got an email from a person that she wanted to see more white girl clothing.
And what's white girl clothing?
What is white girl clothing? Basically, for Black women, we are raised to see ourselves in white people. But white people have never been challenged to see themselves in us. When white is the default standard, everything else is like, oh, like the moment that addresses on a Black person, it becomes urban. The moment that a Black something, oh, that's low value, low rent, ghetto, hood, all those things. So it's like, just the perception, the regular, like, even when they say normalize Black plus size luxury, normalize Black luxury, because people don't know how to see it. Because they automatically think Black, they think we can't be fancy like y'all. I'm done. I'm just like, that was just like the funniest thing. And I got mad, but I tweeted or posted and I had to delete it. But white girl clothing.
I mean, I think it shows up like a lot, like every day. Like, I mean, how many times have you seen like a Black woman's, so I think, you know, within the plus size community, especially with our body positive movement, right? Like, how many times have you seen a Black woman's body be taken down by Instagram? Like, it happens all the time. And yet I see tons of naked plus size white women on my feed, you know, sharing the same kinds of photos, sharing photos of their stretch marks, whatever. I think it's great. I think we should need to be seeing these images, because, you know, a lot of people have, you know, this body dysmorphia and all those things, but like, you see it happen all the time where Black women are sharing these images and it's like, oh, you can't do that. Like, Instagram bans you, right? So I think that's the biggest way that we kind of see it in our day-to-day, because I see that so often.
Can we talk about getting banned? Because, man, I've been banned so many times for my photos, and it's like,
oh, no.
yo, what is going on? Like, I remember I started, when I first even came into journalism, I started a column it was a body positive column, and the article was literally about the discrepancies between, you know, being nude on a white person and being nude on a Black person. And they took the post down, and the whole post was literally about the discrepancies. So it was just like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get this message out here if the message is being taken down. So it's just like the algorithm is against you. And then it's just like you just like, your body is just like its own, your body goes against the community guidelines, period.
That part. You know what's interesting to that, Ari, is that now there are, on Instagram, there is a plus woman a Black plus woman who comes from Black media, who is now in charge of communities. On Twitter, there is a Black woman. She's not plus, but she's very aware of the niche and like some of the issues. And so, Pinterest, I don't know who that is, but they are starting to bring in people, right? And starting to have those conversations, or I'm starting those conversations with them because I'm like, yo, what you doing about this? But these social media platforms are starting to become aware, or they're bringing in people who have that experience or understanding, especially at Instagram, and interestingly enough, to Charmaine's point, on Facebook. So it's going to be interesting to see how this like evolves and changes.
I'm very interested to see how it evolves.
Joyniece, did you want to add something before?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, you know, in terms of my sort of time in the plus community, putting myself out there, I think my experience has been, I wouldn't say unique, but a little interesting. I haven't necessarily experienced a significant amount of like direct colorism. I've always been loud and proud about my Blackness. So I think people kind of just get it. You know, showing my hair in its natural state, whatever, talking about my skin, and loving how melanated I am. But I do think that, you know, where I do see some discrimination, and even I guess this also leans into the whole anti-Blackness topic as well, is that oftentimes when I see someone my size featured, it's a white woman. Always. And I think that's kind of, it's that whole idea of being palatable, right? Like,
right.
So I think there were plenty of plus size Black models long before, you know, we even got to the super plus side. This is back when like 18 was like unheard of, you know, like people were already in the industry doing the work, but we see time and time again those models who are more racially ambiguous or those models who are white, they seem to be more successful by conventional terms, right? So it hasn't escaped me that, 9 times out of 10, if there is a spot for someone who is extended plus sizes, I know how this works, having worked in other professional spaces. I feel like oftentimes I can kind of guess who it might go to. That isn't always the case. Sometimes people surprise you, and that's always wonderful. But I think it's just the idea that, like, whenever something new is introduced, it is typically introduced with a white or racially ambiguous person until it's palatable enough. And then they're like, okay, let's kind of spread it out a little bit. But yeah, that's been my experience so far, or at least what I've observed.
Or it's like tokenized, right? Or like or sensationalized, right? It's other for the shock value intentionally, which then like even becomes more damaging at the end of the day. And like you have part of the problem is like for so long, social media has been our ally. Social media has literally been the reason why the plus size industry and community has grown the way it has. But what's interesting is that for the longest time, those in power, the buyers, the marketers, the merchandisers, the model agents, right, or the agencies, they were the ones who defined what plus is and or should look like. Social media democratized that. So for a while, there was this fight. A brand would ask for a size 18 model, the agency would send a size 12. The brand would ask for a dark skin model, the brand would send like a Kardashian-ish person, right? Like, so you started having like this push and pull between like in between different pillars of the fashion space. And so even now, like now social media is like, everyone's like, F the agencies, F the brands. I'm going to be my own brand. I'm going to be my own agency. I'm going to do my own. The democratization has literally allowed us the space to show up and take space boldly in ways that we didn't have. We didn't have Zoom. We didn't have Zoom. We didn't have all these platforms. But now we find where we can and we own it and we take up that space. And it's allowed us that opportunity. So it's like, it's a very interesting, like the nerd in me is just like fascinated at that, like how things have moved along.
Yeah, for sure. You also brought up a really great point in saying that a lot of times when brands do use like models above a size 18 or dark skin models, it feels very like they're tokenizing them, and it just feels very inauthentic. So I'm wondering, now that it seems that some brands are trying to diversify and bring on, a wider spectrum of plus models in their campaigns and such, how can Black women advocate for themselves to make sure that they're getting paid fairly, but then also are treated properly as well from these brands? Because I know, Charmaine, you mentioned that during Black History Month, you've gotten some requests to do work for free, which is inexcusable, especially during Black History Month. How do you just make sure that like these offers that you're getting from brands are on par with, say, like, your more lighter skin counterparts?
Well, me personally, I talk to so many people. So like I'm in influencer groups, like I DM, like if I follow someone who a brand has worked with, like who is Black or white or whatever, doesn't matter to me, I'm gonna hit her up and be like, hey girl, like, this brand, they came to me and like, I'm so excited to work with them. Like, do you know if they don't offer me money, do you know if they like pay? Do you know, like, they offered me this much, like, do you think that's good? Do you think I should ask for more? And like, more than often than not, like people want to help you because you know, if we start having these conversations on the back end, like that helps everyone, right? That helps us all when we're pitching, that helps us all when we're negotiating, that helps us understand like, okay, no, there's more money that I'm leaving on the table. Like, let me go back and ask for some more. Let me go back and ask for, or tell them that I can only, you know, accept this amount for like, I'll take something off, you know, off the list. Like, you know what I mean? I think we have to feel comfortable and open chatting with each other about these things, because that only does us a disservice if we don't know what we don't know. You know what I mean? So for me, I think that's very important, is talking to, you know, my fellow bloggers and just reaching out to people that I know to kind of get a feel for what's going on. And the plus size community is small. Like, you know, if a brand is reaching out to you, or, you know, you're pitching a brand or whatever, chances are you know someone, you know, that has worked with them before. And, you know, I think it's a very easy way to kind of level the playing field if you're not uncomfortable in doing so. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
We're going to jump to some Q&A questions just because we're running a bit late on time. And so the first one is from Juliet. And now, Marie, you touched on this point a little, but she asked, you know, she sees dark-skinned women in campaigns for affordable brands like Ashley Stewart, Lane Bryant, etc., but not so much as the price point gets higher. And so looking at the more luxury brands that we're seeing pop up nowadays that are extending their sizes, why do we think that is, that only in kind of the affordable brands are we seeing dark-skinned Black women, but as the price point gets higher, it becomes less and less?
The first person who comes to my mind is Precious Lee and Lyris Cross. Summer, for example, Summer was around for a minute. So we've had a couple of models, and oftentimes those luxury higher end brands work with agencies. So they're looking for agency signed models. So when you go and look at a board, you know, they usually have like that one dark skinned girl. So I think it's a mixture of a few things. The agencies have to diversify, so getting, you know, more models repped on boards. Two, these brands that are going to these Ford type of brands, like these modeling agencies, they're not doing a model, like an everyday model contest submission. Like these higher end brands are going directly to an agency and seeing what's there. So the challenge is now going to be like, how do we disrupt those modeling agencies to give more diversity of Black and different shades and ranges? One dark skinned model said to me, why do we only have ambiguous to Africa? Like, the model, like, she was like, there's no in between. And I was like, girl, I didn't even think about that. And so I look at, you know, like the models, like even in our ranges, like look at us on here. We have 5 different looks, right? You know, but we don't see that represented in models. You have like uber dark skin with really short hair, or you have the curly hair, light skin, ambiguous chick. You don't have anything in between, right? And so now the challenge is like, how do we challenge these agencies to give more diversity? Secondly, some of these agencies, when you have a higher end brand, you also have to look at who's behind it, right? Because some of these brands that are run by they're run by gay white men, they're run by non-Black people, non-plus people. So if they have no context to the community, they're going to only go with like what's easy, quick for them. So that's why it's also important that they hire plus people, right? They diversify, because, you know, there's a level of arrogance or what is it? Like, you know, elitism. There we go. When you start having higher price points and people get real snooty and sedity up there. Like that's gonna affect like where they place value. And so, you know, we see it play out. Sorry, Juliet, I don't have like a prettier answer for you, but like that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. I also just think we need to expand our definition of luxury, because Black people are luxury, our existence luxurious. So we definitely need to change that narrative. So we have another question. It's anonymous. So they said, as a white person, I'm trying to actively buy from brands that include and diversify, that are inclusive and diversify. What's the best way for us to support you in your anti-colorism what's the best way to support you in your anti-colorism efforts? It's open for any of the panelists.
Honestly, it's really about incorporating people who are just of other communities into your life. I think, we're always like, you need to treat Black people like human beings. So treat us like human beings, like eat the cereal that we produce, buy our cookies, like watch our television shows, watch Living Single instead of Friends, because Living Single is actually the first Friends. Like, do your research, do your due diligence, because a lot of the content that is white that you know and love, it was already created by Black people first. So go into the archives. Do you have Black friends? Do you have dark-skinned friends? Do you have dark-skinned Desi friends? Because colorism, that's a whole other conversation, but colorism goes beyond the Black community. And so it's things like that. It's those nuanced things where it's like, it's not just buy from a Black brand. It's like infuse Blackness into your life. We're not a commodity. We're a part of the world. So treat us as such.
Get it hard.
That's all I have.
Absolutely. Did anyone else want to chime in there?
I think they got it.
Yep.
She wrapped that up pretty perfectly. And so on that, we are up on time for this evening. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to our 4 amazing panelists and everyone who came to tune in. We are so grateful that we're able to have this conversation with all of you today and hope that we can continue to do this in our future panels. Of course, make sure to follow us on Instagram. We'll post all of our future panels and events and more of these conversations there. But thank you again for everyone joining us this evening. Make sure to use code POWER30 to get 30% off your purchase at Curvy Couture. We will send an email to all of you later on tonight with that information. And thank you again.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.